Welcome to Module 8 of Sensation and Perception Online. This presentation will differentiate taste and flavor, discuss the 4 basic tastes, describe the process of taste detection, and the sensory pathway to the brain. Finally, we'll discuss the fact that the experience of taste varies across individuals. What is the difference between taste and flavor? Taste is the sensation of dissolved molecules in the mouth, and there are 5 different basic tastes: salty, sour, sweet, bitter, and umami. When we say, "Man, that food tasted good," we usually don't mean, "Man, that was a good mixture of salty, sour, sweet, and bitter." What we mean is that it had good flavor. The flavor is a combination of taste and olfaction woven together. As we chew food, molecules from the food are broken up, lifted into the air of our mouths, and pass into our nasal cavity retronasally. That is, we smell the food as we are chewing it. This is why when we have a stuffy nose, our food doesn't taste as good. The olfactory and taste systems are similar in that both detect changes in the concentrations of chemicals, but each system has a different function. The olfactory system identifies and distinguishes between many different objects. Taste, however, is used to distinguish food from things that are not food, in particular, poisons. The process of taste sensation begins in the taste buds. The taste buds are embedded in papillae on the tongue and soft palate. Each taste bud contains many taste receptor cells. Taste receptors convert the chemicals in food to neural energy. The microvilli, which are slender projections on the tips of the taste receptors, contain binding sites for particular molecules. Although there are 5 basic tastes, there are only 2 basic categories of receptor mechanisms. The first is the ionic receptor mechanism. In this case, there are ion channels in the receptor neuron that allow positively charged ions to enter the cell, changing its polarity. Salt and sour are sensed by this mechanism. The second mechanism is the lock and key mechanism. In this case, receptors in the membrane match the shape of particular molecules. When, say, a sugar molecule binds to the receptor site, a chemical cascade of events ensues, changing the polarity of the neuron. The type of taste sensed by this mechanism are sweet, bitter, and umami, or savoriness. I should also mention that the 5 tastes are referred to as basic tastes because they are not combined to form new tastes. In other words, things can be bitter-sweet, but it is still bitter and sweet. It isn't some new taste. A sauce can be sweet and sour, but that doesn't make it some new taste. In other words, tastes don't combine to produce new tastes. The taste pathway begins at the taste receptors, which are innervated by the cranial nerve fibers. These fibers extend to the brainstem, where they synapse on other neurons. These neurons then extend their axons to the thalamus, where again they synapse on other neurons. The neurons in the thalamus send their axons to the insular cortex, which is the primary taste processing area of the brain. Taste is further processed by the orbitofrontal cortex, where taste information is combined with temperature, texture, and smell to produce the perception of flavor. Taste perceptions vary dramatically across individuals, but are these differences due to nature or nurture? Is it really fair to tell someone, "Just eat your vegetables, they aren't that bad"? There is some evidence that our preferences for taste are due to nurture, that is, experience. One quick example is that our sensitivity to salt varies depending on the type of diet that we have. When put on a low-sodium diet, food might taste very bland at first, but one quickly adapts to the low sodium, and soon the amounts of salt that were previously used on food taste too salty. There is also evidence for a nature or inherited component. The number of papillae vary a great deal from person to person. This is an inherited trait. Those with the fewest papillae are referred to as non-tasters, while those with the most papillae are referred to as supertasters. The name non-taster doesn't mean that they can't taste, only that they are less sensitive to some tastes. More papillae generally means that one has more taste buds, which means that one has more taste receptors. The more taste receptors one has, the more sensitivity they have for some tastes. For example, the graph shows ratings made by non-tasters in red and supertasters in blue when tasting a bitter substance. They rated the intensity and the hedonic value, or how pleasurable it was, on a scale of 1 being low and 9 being high. The dashed line represents a rating of 5, or a moderate rating. In the left graph, we can see that non-tasters rated the lowest concentration as a low intensity, whereas supertasters rated it as a moderate intensity. As the concentration of the bitter substance increased, the supertasters rated it more and more intensely, with the highest concentration being rated as extremely intense. However, the highest concentration was only rated as being moderately intense by the non-tasters. The right graph shows a similar relationship with hedonic ratings. At the lowest concentration, the non-tasters rated the bitter substance as neutral, or okay tasting, but the supertasters rated it as lower. The supertasters rated the bitter taste lower and lower with each increase in concentration, but it really wasn't until the highest concentration that the non-tasters rated the bitter substance as less than neutral. However, this same relationship doesn't hold for salt. The non-tasters and supertasters rated the intensity and hedonic value of salt concentrations equally. That is, the two groups perceived saltiness equally. Why does taste preference matter? There are concerns and evidence to suggest that supertasters are less likely to eat vegetables, since they tend to be bitter, and as a result suffer from more illnesses and diseases that vegetables might prevent, like colon cancer. Also, child supertasters tend to have a greater preference for sugar. On the other hand, supertasters are also less likely to consume coffee, alcohol, or smoke cigarettes, since those are bitter tasting. To review, taste and flavor are not the same thing. Taste is a chemical sense. The taste receptors in the taste buds detect changes in the chemical concentrations of particular compounds in the saliva. There are two kinds of receptor mechanisms, ionic and lock and key, and there are 5 basic tastes: salty, sour, bitter, sweet, and umami, or savoriness. Finally, the sensitivity to some tastes, particularly bitter, is inherited and tends to impact the dietary habits of individuals.